Welcome to episode 1 of the World Club of the Week, the show where we profile a new football club, soccer club, calcio club, whatever you want to call it, new club every week. A lot of these clubs are actually going to be more than just football clubs. They're going to be doing volleyball or basketball, various things. But today we have a club that is only participating in soccer, and I'm going to say soccer for this one because we're going to talk about Atlanta Soccer Club. Some people may out there be thinking, I've never heard of this Atlanta Soccer Club. I do follow U.S. soccer. Well, that you might not have been following the last 2 days because the Atlanta Silverbacks are now known as Atlanta SC. This was supposed to be a show about the Atlanta Silverbacks. So we found out that the Atlanta Silverbacks are no more. So I am Doug Whitfield, and my co-host is my brother, Evan Whitfield. Hello, Evan.
Hello.
So, yeah, it was either terrible timing or great timing with this news. We found out.
I think it was
two days ago.
Yeah, I think it. Well, no.
No, it was yesterday morning.
It was yesterday. The tweet I saw from, I guess it was the NPSL, was January 4th, which would have been yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday morning. So, the Atlanta Silverbacks, as they were previously known, do kind of have a windy history. So this Atlanta SC is not a new club. It's a club that's been around since 2008. They've played in the NPSL their entire existence. They took off 2013. I don't know the story behind that. Do you know the story behind their hiatus that 1 year?
Which year?
The 2013 season that they took off.
There was 1 year where they were changing ownership and they couldn't find new owners, but I don't know if it was that year. I thought it said 2015.
Yes, so that's actually the Silverbacks. So yeah, so this Atlanta SC club was not originally the Atlanta Silverbacks. The Atlanta Silverbacks, they folded in 2015.
Yes,
and then this Atlanta SC team took over that name, and they were playing in Silverback Stadium.
Yes. They were renting the name. I don't even know how that really works, but they were renting the name Silverbacks, and they chose finally to stop renting that name and I guess go back to Atlanta SC.
Yeah, and they my understanding is that they're not going to be at Silverbacks Park anymore either.
No, that's what I remember reading too, was they kind of broke away with the ownership of the park. So like the park will probably still keep that name, but this, I don't want to say new soccer club, but this new endeavor that they're going in seems to be a break from the park and a break from the name, and wants to get kind of like a fresh start is what it seems like. They're just ready to kind of kickstart and do something new, try something new. So I'm assuming the park will still be named Silverbacks, but this club, I guess they're looking for a home.
Yeah, I think they're a home. They have a league home, but a stadium home.
Yes, a stadium home. Yes,
right. Yeah, that's an issue that unfortunately a lot of NPSL teams struggle with. We had here in Minneapolis, we had. Our club actually didn't play in Minneapolis last season because there were no stadiums to be had in Minneapolis. So, but I'm happy to say that they're back for the 2019 season. So I was looking at this. I'm a little confused, and maybe you can clear this up. So I said, I think that they started in 2008. That was their first season. They were actually founded in 2007 as Atlanta FC. So yeah, there's the whole FC and now their SC thing. I guess in a generic sense, what's your thought on the whole SC versus FC thing?
I don't know. I mean, like it being them being an American team, and I guess in America it's known as soccer, so they're just going with the soccer club. I know that other places around the world do use the SC, but they don't use it for soccer. It's sporting because they do a lot of
Yeah.
other sports. So the SC is not anything new to America. It's not anything new to the world. So like I'm fine with it. I think the debate over it is kind of silly and maybe a little dumb, but I mean everybody is allowed to have their own opinion. Um, but I mean, some people are going to call it soccer, some people are going to call it football, and it's just the way it is. We just got to go along with whatever they choose and cheer for the teams we want to cheer for.
So, yeah, no, I totally agree. I just saw that this the old Atlanta FC, they went into the playoffs and they lost to the Midwest champions, the St. Paul Twin Stars. That's funny because the St. Paul Twin Stars are no longer known as the St. Paul Twin Stars. So this is another one of those like very common U.S. soccer scene sort of things where teams change names like all the time. You can look at Minnesota United and their history. That's for another show. But I just saw it was funny that they lost to the Twin Stars, who they play in Minneapolis City's division, the NPLS North now. So this says too that the club was founded in 1998. So I'm a little bit confused about that because they don't seem to have any records up until 2008. Are those just lost to times? And I guess they did they were a U23 team in 2007. And so they won a Region 3 U23 National Cup in 2007. But even I don't see anything before 2007 for a date for even this U23 team. Did you find anything about that?
No, and I wonder with that the date being like 1998. I don't really know where that came from unless there's some confusion of like that's when the Silverbacks started. So like the
Yeah, well,
Silverbacks actually started in 1998, but this Atlanta SC club, which was technically different, started later than that and then took on their name. And so there might have been some confusion and they might not have actually started until much later than that.
yeah, that's a good point. Because 98 is the year that the Silverbacks took the Silverbacks name. Oh, but they weren't always the Silverbacks, were they? They were the Atlanta Ruckus, and they started in 1994. So, yeah, that's probably what it is. That they're going there. And this Atlanta SC team used to be, before they were the Atlanta Silverbacks, they were the Atlanta Silverbacks Reserves. So yeah, it's kind of a mess, the whole naming thing. But who knows what they were asking for as far as the naming rights. You'd think that. I mean, I guess part of it when you change your name, it's free press, but it's got to be confusing for the casual fan. Like
Yes.
who is where did the Silverbacks go?
Yes.
So
Anybody wanting to get into the game and looking at it from one season to the next, be like, oh, last season there was this team that played here under this name, and then the next year that team no longer plays there, doesn't even have that same name. It's very confusing and hard to know. But like you said before, that seems to happen through a lot of American soccer clubs, especially at the lower levels, if we want to use the word level, to determine how big these clubs are. Because I know that the North Carolina teams have changed names in the recent years.
oh yeah.
So it will be nice when things do finally get settled and clubs don't change names. They are. They have their own history, and they don't want to change names anymore. They have been used that they can, I guess, I don't know, not support, but um, be profitable in. I don't even know if that's a thing at these
Yeah.
levels, but be able to exist in these stadiums and different deals that they have.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, in 150 years ago, maybe slightly less than that, but 100 plus years ago, the same thing was happening in other countries. And,
Hmm.
Manchester United was not always Manchester United, for example. And then, of course, like you have splits, like AC Milan and Internationale. So, there is it probably still happens at the lower levels in other countries. Teams fold, and well, I mean, Rangers more or less folded. I mean, they were able to keep their name, but
Hmm.
they had to like become a new. They had to register as a new club in the bottom tier of the Scottish. I think it was the Scottish fourth division, and then work their way back up. So it still sort of happens, but it seems like in 2019, it does happen in the U.S. more than it happens in other places. Um, but to bring us back to Atlanta SC, at least in a way, I wanted to note that there is still a Lawrenceville FC that exists. I don't know, and they are in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I mean, it's that Lawrenceville. I don't know if it's the same club, and this is a purely amateur side, Lawrenceville FC. They've got a Facebook page. That's all I really know about them. But I don't see anything about their history, previous to that 2007 thing. One thing that's interesting about this Lawrenceville FC, the one that exists now, I don't know if this was always the case, but they're they appear to be like of like Liberian descent, or like Liberian I guess expats. I don't know if they're refugees or what, but in the Atlanta area, they've started their own club in Lawrenceville. So, of course, that's something that you see in a lot of places too. That ethnic teams. Of course, it's not reflected in their name at all. But yeah. So, did you have anything else to say about Atlanta SC? Because I had one other thing that I wanted to go through with them.
I don't know. I mean, the thing that I found interesting, and I was looking to see if Atlanta SC was in the same boat as if this was the reason that they were finally going to change their names, but there was a ladies team with the name the Atlanta Silverbacks. They were the Atlanta Silverbacks women. And I didn't know this until I was just looking. I thought silverback was like a type of fish, which I don't know if that really made sense for it to be in Atlanta. Um, and there might be a fish that's called a silverback, but they're named from a male gorilla.
Right.
And so having a women's team that's the name of a male gorilla sounds a little bit odd. And so I thought maybe when I was first diving into this that that's why they were going to change, was because trying to be as gender neutral as possible, or not trying to have some sort of like, well, why are there's a women team if they're called the male gorillas? I mean, like it was just odd. But I can't find anything about an Atlanta SC women's team right now. It's possible there is one, but I just can't find anything about it. But I don't think that's part of it. I think it was they just wanted to move in a new direction, and that was that.
Yeah. There's a silver dollarfish and a silverfish, but I don't think there's a silverback.
Maybe one of those might have been what I was thinking of.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought. I guess I wouldn't think twice about a women's team named the Bulls, but yeah, um, I guess you have the same issue there. Um, so
Mhm.
I don't know. Yeah, there's probably more examples of that, but the one thing that I did want to talk about with Atlanta SC was their their successes, I guess. They've been, I'd say, fairly mediocre is not the word. They've been good, but they finished second a lot. So from 2014 until 2018, the last season, they finished second in the Southeast Division of the NPSL every single time. They finished second. And then from 2008 to 2012, they finished second twice in that time. And then there was a southeast east region in the NPSL in 2012 for some reason, but it's been the southeast every other time. They did win the southeast their very first season in the NPSL in 2008. And because of that, they went into the playoffs and they went into the divisional round. The NPLS playoffs have changed, and now the teams that finish second in each division also go into the playoffs. And so all those years that they finished second from 2014 to 2008, they went into the playoffs. And so they were the NPSL South Atlantic Conference champions. They were the NPSL Southeast Conference. They went to the conference semifinal, and then they were the NPSL Southeast Conference champions in those playoffs. So the NPSL North doesn't do playoffs like that. So I'd have to look at the way that works. Like the Midwest region has a playoff, and it, like this year, Minneapolis played, I think, a team in Michigan in the first round, and then in the second round they played Duluth, and so that wouldn't be for the Southeast. That would have been for the mid, or not for the North. That would have been in the Midwest. It's kind of weird because you think I would think that the North would be a bigger region than the Midwest, but it's actually the other way around. The North is part of the Midwest. But anyway, that's really neither here nor there. As far as the Open Cup, which is our version of the FA Cup in the U.S., the Atlanta SC, which were, Silverbacks some of these years, they went into the first round of the Open Cup in 2009 and also in the first round in 2016. Then they made it to the second round in 2017. And I would say making it to the second round of the Open Cup is actually it's pretty successful for a fourth. This is a fourth division side. Last year we didn't have it a second division, so whatever that means, I don't know. But it's still I'd say it's a pretty impressive feat. I mean, obviously it depends on the draw, who you might end up playing against, but the travel in the Open Cup that's one thing that makes it way different than the FA Cup. Is like I don't know where that Atlanta SC has had to travel, but they might have had to travel to, say, like a Texas or something. That's a really long way for a club of that size to travel. Again, drawing from what I know from Minneapolis City, they had to play their opening round Open Cup match in New York a couple of years ago. So, or actually, that was last year. The Open Cup has a weird schedule for those that aren't familiar with it, so that it kind of like overlaps with the season in a really odd way. So one year they had to go to New York. So, all right. Anything else before we talk about the Silverbacks just a little bit?
Oh, I think that's it. Time to move on.
Yeah. We've been weaving that in there for a bit. I just really want to go over the basics of the Atlanta Silverbacks. So Atlanta Silverbacks, as they are now, the history that is now the sort of the official Atlanta Silverbacks history, that ends in 2015, even though there's been another team using that name. They're around from 1994 to 2015. They played in Atlanta Silverbacks Park, which with a capacity of 5,000 people. The Atlanta Silverbacks, they played in 3 different divisions in the U.S. They played in the A-League, which doesn't exist anymore. They played in the USL First Division, which doesn't exist under that name anymore, but the USL still exists. And then they played in the North American Soccer League, which also doesn't exist anymore. So a whole lot of not existing on the Atlanta Silverbacks. But I have this feeling that somebody will resurrect that name at some point. The North American Soccer League has a very storied history. So I think at some point someone will bring that back. So we already mentioned this, but since we're sort of brought it into the Atlanta Silverbacks part of the show, I did want to mention again that that the Atlanta Ruckus was the original name of that team, and the A League stood for American Professional Soccer League, so it was just shortened to the A League, taking that American. Of course, that could have been. I think the Australian League is called the A League now, isn't it?
Yes, it
is. So,
so when I saw that, I was kind of like, "What's going on here?" But
yeah. No, I remember the A League back when it was a thing. I think there was probably some North Carolina teams in the A League, but we can figure that out on another show. But yeah, the Silverbacks have had Eric Winalda as a coach twice, once as an interim. Both times pretty short-lived. They had other coaches those same years, but
he's moved into, or did move into, a technical director position after he was done coaching. So I don't know what kind of, if he's from Atlanta or if he just has staked his claim in Atlanta now, but it seems like he was very interested in this team for several seasons. Not sure what kind of role he has right now, though.
Yeah, they he's actually from California, so I don't know. I mean, he never played for an Atlanta team. So yeah, maybe he probably just knows somebody. That would be my guess.
Yeah, probably.
So so go ahead.
I do think it was interesting how, like, right before the team kind of folded, I guess after 2015, they reached the quarterfinals of the Open Cup in 2014, and then the fourth round in 2015. And then in that 2014 year, they beat two MLS teams on the path to the quarterfinals. And it's just shocking, like, that's how quickly things can turn around. A club that was beating MLS sides 2 years later basically no longer existed.
Yeah. So I get, hindsight is 2020, but you say that, and to me, it doesn't sound shocking at all. Because again, knowing about the financial situation now, granted, this was a second division side, not a fourth division side that we're talking about, but the travel involved in the U.S. Open Cup is just so intense that, and you don't necessarily get a lot of people coming to those games, especially if, so like a lot of the MLS teams play in like different stadiums that don't have as large a capacity. Like DC United, for example, plays in the Maryland Soccer Complex for their U.S. Open Cup games, and it's cool for the fans in those areas. I don't necessarily think the team shouldn't do that, especially at the MLS level. But for these second division sides that are looking for, a payday when they're playing an MLS team, if they're on the road, that payday is not coming. I don't know how gate receipts work or anything like that. So maybe they just don't get anything. I don't know. But the way that the U.S. Soccer Federation does travel expenses, I don't know. Maybe it's professional teams get allocation for that. But I know that the fourth division sides do not get any travel money, but that the MLS sides do. Doesn't make any sense because the MLS are the ones that can afford it the most. But I guess the USSF wants the MLS teams to participate, and the only way they're willing to participate is if the USSF pays for the travel. That's I'm guessing why it works that way. But yeah, I mean, they were also champions of the NASL in 2013.
Yeah. Well, at least in the spring.
Yeah, so they do a Clausura Apertura, or it's other way around, Apertura Clausura, I guess. Season, spring and fall. But that's pretty common in Latin America. So yeah, I guess the way that the NASL did it was, I think, a little bit different than a lot of Latin American countries do it, because they have a playoff that's based off the spring. So the spring winner went into the playoff, and the fall winner went into the playoffs. And then I think the two teams with the highest point totals between. So like if you finished second in both the spring and the fall, then you got into the playoffs. And then of course it would kind of depend on how well you did versus how well the other teams did as far as their point total. But obviously if you finish second in both, you're going to get into the playoffs. Yeah. And they did have some other success. They were the runners-up in the A-League in 95. They were runners-up in the USL in 2007. And then there's this thing called the Southern Derby. Do you know anything about that? Because I've never heard of it.
Nope, never heard of it.
Yeah, so that was a thing that at least existed between 2002 and 2006. So go to the Atlanta Silverbacks FC Wikipedia page if you want to learn more about the Southern Derby, and click on the Southern Derby link, because we've never heard of it, and we both lived in the South for many years. So yeah, it's not a big deal. It's like the Emirates Cup. It's the Emirates Cup of the South, basically. That's what I'm gonna call it until somebody tells me I'm wrong. So if you do think I'm wrong, right down there's a comment section. So tell us if we left anything out that's important. Leave that knowledge for someone else who wants to learn about this Atlanta SC and the Atlanta Silverbacks. Also, if you have a club suggestion, please leave it in the comments. I would like to focus on clubs that still exist. But if there's an old club that no longer exists, there are two internationales, I guess, in Brazil, one of which no longer exists. We might be open to talking about the old one, but we'll probably talk about that when we talk about the current international. Speaking of international, that's the club that we're doing next week.
It is.
Yeah, so we'll talk about a Brazilian club next week, and that just goes to show you that, wherever the club is, we will certainly try. We're going to need to have some information. I'm going to say in Spanish, English, and German. Is German okay? Is your German good enough, Evan? If we have some German resources?
I can make sense reading through it.
We'll try.
Yes.
Yeah. So if we can get resources in English, for sure, Spanish and German, we'll try on that. We might have to put it off for a bit or get a guest. So I've got some guests lined up for some for River Plate, and then probably we're going to have some on for Boca. We've got a lot of clubs coming up. We'll try to have guests on as often as it makes sense. It's 2019. One of our, I don't want to say it's a resolution, but I wanted to have, we're going to take December off. That's the way we're going to do this show. So let's get started, make it happen this week. So no guest this week. Probably not going to have a guest next week for a variety of reasons. But if you want to be on to talk about your club, or you have somebody that you think would be interested in coming on and talking about a club, definitely let us know. You can email me if you don't want to leave information in the comments. It's doug@blocksonic.com. That's blocsonic.com. And then I can get Evan that information. Or you can tweet us. I am DAW Sports on Twitter. And then Evan, you are Coach Whitfield 8 now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And Whitfield is spelled Whitfield if you're looking for him on Twitter. Is there anything else that you have to say about things going forward, Evan?
Not really. It's been fun this week, and I look forward to doing it from week in and week out from now on.
Awesome. I did want to mention one more thing before we go. I wanted to say that all of our shows are going to be licensed under Creative Commons attribution. That means that you can pull these off of YouTube, put them on a podcast. make our faces look really weird in the video. I do whatever you want, but what you need to do if you do that is link back to the original so people can get the context for that. That's the only thing that you need to do under that CCPY license. So thank you very much for watching to this part. Again, leave us a comment so if you have anything about what you'd like to see going forward. Oh, actually, just thought of one more thing. If you want to send any sort of like club swag, you want us to put a shirt or hat or a sticker or whatever on the show, you can definitely send that way. We'll figure out how we're going to do that. You can, again, email me if that's something that your club would like to do. Probably I'll get something somehow set up on like an Amazon wish list or something so that's easy to do. I might just put my address up too for people to send things. I live in a secure building, so I'm not so concerned about that. But we'll figure that out. But if you do want to send us some swag, definitely drop us a line on the email or on Twitter. But thanks so much for joining us this time, and we will see you next week on another World Club of the Week.